Well, there you have it. Those are our two teams for this map. Ebin, a team who has some absolute superstars who also seem to be the ones we highlight when they lose as well as when they win. And Default currently sitting pretty in second place. That is the matchup as it stacks up, and it will be on Ilios. We are going to be handing it once again over to Australia's finest, BobbyJ and Doctor. Take it away, fellas.
Thank you very much, and Doc, we're back and ready again. We're going to be on Ilios this time around, of course. No surprise that this map got drafted. Both these teams love the dive comp, and with Ebin and Default, about Default being at 4 wins to Ebin's 3, Ebin must pull out a win here, Doctor. And how do you feel about these two matchups?
It'll be really interesting to see, for me personally, BobbyJ matching up against Colorhex and Yang a bit. Yang's been pulling out a really solid Tracer today, Colorhex as well on the Genji, and how BobbyJ can sort of go into them, and what Vitania can do behind him as well, picking up a bit more, not so much of the divey DPS, but going with the soldier a little bit more.
I'm happy to see that Ebin have stringed together some wins, because they would have been kicking themselves over that 10-18 loss in the first round on Route 66, where I felt like the Reaper pick really cost them. So it's good to see that they're still in it. And Default, they may be on tilt from last game. They were so close to even just losing on Watchpoint Gibraltar. They brought it back. But this map definitely favors both sides. So I feel like this one is going to be an even one, Doctor, even just looking at the picks now. And the one thing that's going to be thrown into the mix will be Colorhex on that Widowmaker.
Yeah, Ruin's that one King of the Hill map that you can actually get away with the Widow. It really does come down to the execution of your SG team as well, though. He does need to get a couple of picks, but the one thing that has to happen is making sure that they distract enough players that gives him a bit of free reign to really maneuver around.
Ebin are the ones that are closer to the checkpoint now. Mr. Saigoon holding up that shield for Vitania to get some unanswered damage on the back line. But you can see Colorhex up on the high ground, trying to get some shots in. But Yang is the first one to touch base. She gets the hook on top of BobbyJ, which is the main source of damage from Ebin. So this might be a difficult one. The fight's still going to continue here on the high ground. They've been forced back by the hooks of Yang. Just need to rotate. They want to wait for BobbyJ.
Yeah, but that opening hook, taking away that Genji, he was the one player that could really go in there and start to contest Colorhex on that Widow. But just that opening pick, nobody can go in, they have to back away, and as well as losing a little bit of DPS there. And just right now, Yang is really opening up for them, and I think he's outmatching Bane a little bit at the moment.
Look how far he's pushed forward as well, Doctor. He's forcing them towards their spawn point, so very aggressive hold coming out from Default. Just misses there. Dallas was a little bit low, has to heal back up. But you look at the ult percentages, Doctor. Default looking pretty good.
Yeah, looking pretty solid. Collex just needs to get some good positioning. He's backing up at the moment. Those pillars are great positions to go on. As Yang and Bane trade hooks, and Bane comes out on top this time.
Go time now for Ebin. They've got the Vita Grenade on top of Purge. He needs to be careful. He's moved back though. This will actually help him out. The charge comes out from Mr. Saigoon, and the Earth Shatter comes out from Purge. Slam down a couple of members. Nano Boost on top of him as he charges in. J-Dog is in Colorhex there to back him up. They've got a pick each, and it still will be Default in control of the checkpoint.
Yep, when your Widow's popping off shots like this right now, he's doing a great job in this video. He's getting those picks. One important one is if he can actually match up against that Genji, he managed to take him down there as well. They're diving in. There's nobody really right now to follow in BobbyJ into these fights. They've got this standard, like, play behind the Reinhardt shield. They're grouping up with Mr. Saigoon. But then they're sending BobbyJ on kind of a solo mission, and as the rest of his team isn't collapsing him at the same time, he's really left on his own.
Then we begin to creep back towards the checkpoint. They do have Mr. Saigoon's Earth Shadow about ready to go in Vitania's Tactical Visor, but they have to deal with Yang with the whole hog, who will get in a position to push away. But J-Doggy has his own Tactical Visor on top of the checkpoint. Sound barrier popped now right outside the checkpoint for Default. Bane has the whole hog with the Nano Boost just pushed in. He's already got the kill on top of Yang, but J-Doggy's already done a lot of damage. He's got himself several picks on top of the Ebin boys. They're still on top of the checkpoint, but it's not looking good for Arco and Mr. Saigoon.
That was a great little seep dart coming up from Darcy onto Bane there. It actually saved Yang in a trade there with hooks, and that was absolutely splendid. And then you see they go for the charge. They have the sound barrier. Unfortunately, it lands a little bit late, and they've already lost Yang in that fight. But once again, Colorhex is still just sitting at the back of these fights and is very uncontested. I think there needs to be a change up here from Ebin. They need to swap up their lineup and bring something out, maybe more dive, and bring out a Winston as well.
Definitely, I think they should get that Winston happening, but maybe a little bit too late. But Vitania says no, throw down the Tactical Visor. He's got 2 picks, but they fall down to Purge's Earth Shatter. Has the Nano Boost as well, but BobbyJ hits the Dragon Blade. It's all about him. Can he turn the fight around? No.
Yeah, he's got a couple of picks, but it's just pretty much gone at this point. Just even though they can get something off the Tactical Visor, there's still a lot of other players left. It doesn't really matter then there. They've swapped Colorhex onto this Tracer as well. That was a very dominant point there on Ruins. A lot of it off the back of that space that was created by that front line of the players sitting up there with Yang especially. He was just pushing aggression with that hog, making sure that nobody was really able to apply pressure out from Ebin, and that really held them back. So Default playing really well around the fact that they're running that Widow there. Now swapping the map up here to well. You can't really get away with that sort of play. We'll be looking to see a bit of a change up in their playstyle now.
Mr. Saigoon switched onto the Winston. They won't be running Widowmaker, of course, on well, but Color Hex will switch over to the Genji, which is still handy for Mr. Saigoon. He does do quite well against flankers.
Yeah, you just got to really catch out Color Hex if he dives in on this Genji. It's probably the only target he's going to be looking for here. And they've actually swapped to a Pharah as well. They haven't brought out the Mercy with it, so there's going to be a lot on Satiric here to make sure he can keep those very mobile characters right now that will be jumping and darting all over the place. If Ebin can get a good engagement off here, they can collapse in and take out the supports early. That's their opening opportunity.
All about the snowball for them at 3 DPS, and Mr. Saigoon jumps in first. Yang's got him in his sights. He hooks in Mr. Saigoon. He's taken out of the fight. No tank left alive for Ebin. They've got to get some picks now or reset because they have too many players with different spawn timers. It's not going to look good for them as the picks come out now for default.
Yep, and once again, Yang with an opening pick. He managed to pick off Mr. Saigoon. He jumped a little bit ahead of the rest of his team. They didn't follow him up instantaneously. They did get in there with him, but he took a lot of damage before that. Yang's able to isolate him and take him out from the back of that.
Just going to regroup and regather now, Ebin. The only people that are close to their ults is Yang. He's at 65% with the whole hog, and just like we saw on Ruins, Default are in control and looking comfortable on the checkpoint.
Yep, Default really playing well around their tanks up the front. Yang is still, once again, the player just doing a lot of that work, and he plays behind Purge a lot of the time. He's just sitting there with that main tank, and he's always backing him up.
He needs to get himself in a good position. Color Hex is taking a snooze there on the ledge behind everyone. He gets picked out by Bane. Now they can move in 6v5, but J-Doggies gets the kill on top of Vitania. And look at Becca. He's on top of the lighthouse, uncontested. No one's even spotted him yet. Bane needs to look up a little bit, Doctor, and he realizes Becca now has been put to sleep by Dalsu. Yang, though, does get the kill. He gets a double kill actually on Satiric, and I believe that's, I might think of Bachu. So Satiric and Bachu go down. Bane and Mr. Saigoon get a kill apiece, so Ebin's still in contention of the checkpoint, but they have to deal with Yang's whole hog.
Yeah, they need to deal with Yang right now and take him out. Bane's doing a great job in the air on this Pharah. He's getting a couple picks here and there, but it's not cleaning up this fight. Mr. Saigoon does eventually tank down Yang. This is their opportunity. It feels like, though, uncontested Pharah in the air at the moment. They just need to clean up those last few players left on the point.
Well, taking down Color Hex has usually been a thorn in the side of Ebin. Bachu finishes off Becca. Purge is being forced into the corner. J-Dog is there to help, but he's been flanking around. He's trying to take out Archer. Finishes him off with a Helix rocket, but that's the rocket barrage coming out from Bane. Get himself a double kill. They just need to get to the checkpoint and finish capping Ebin.
They're capping and they're still in control of this fight, but they're not cleaning up fast enough. They do eventually take control of the point, but that was about 20 or 30% that they lost, just not cleaning up those individual players left alive. Bane was doing a lot of work on that Pharah, but they weren't able to collapse on those individual targets at the end there. So Yang, he does get a nice little cheeky hook there as they've capped the point, but he does send Mr. Saigoon down the well. Unfortunately, he does get blown up immediately after.
Those kills on Color Hex. And I believe Yang will allow some time for Ebin to get some percentages up. They do have 4 ultimates. We'll make that 5. Bit and Saigoon are ready to go with their ult. So they've got the ult management in their favor now, but they have to deal with the Dragon Blade from Color Hex. He goes straight down on Satiric. They're taking him out. The sound barrier was popped by Ebin, but wasn't in range of their supports. Color Hex does get Bachi does get one back on top of J-Doggy. Says Mr. Saigoon needs to start rotating around. His team isn't with him except for Vitania, who gets hooked point blank. Bachi's on the other end trying to get picks, so it was such a split fight at the moment, Doctor.
Yeah, the Genji goes straight in and dives that backline. Colix manages to isolate Satiric at the start of the fight, which means he can't sync up that nano boost onto Bachu there. He still gets, they trade away kills there and goes in their favor in the end, but it feels like if they could have committed a couple more ults there, they could have had a much cleaner fight. In the end though, they did end up saving quite a few, and they may be able to use that on Bane, going in to just build up more percentage here.
Bachu, Bane, and Vitania are being very aggressive, and no one's dealt with Bane up high in the sky. It's all up to J-Doggies. He's the only hit scan on their team. I guess you could count Ana as well, Dalsu's Ana, but they haven't dealt with Bane quite well. But they do take out Vitania, so there is an opening for Default to move in, but they have to deal with the rocket barrage from Bane, who just gets slapped over the top.
Unfortunately, the Earthshatter there not hitting on any of the players. Purge's shield's up in time. He protects his team, the sound barrier as well, keeping the players alive so that they're able to land that sleep dart on to the Bane there and put him down. Now they just need to clean up once again. Yang making so much space for his team. And the one thing is, I've kept mentioning Yang, the rest of the players are doing a lot with that space. Colhex is going around disrupting that backline. J-Dog is laying down sustained fire. And once again, Dalsu is just sitting at the back, keeping those players alive, allowing them to get away with these plays.
Still have the Playmaker and Bachu. He's got the Dragon Blade, and they have Satiric's Nano Boost to help him out, and Vitania could do some work on the back line with the Pulse Bomb. So they have options here, Ebin, but they need to watch out for the Earthshatter. And Bachu's already taken out Becca. He's taken out Dalsu as well. He's turning around, but Color Hex does the exact opposite. He's got a double kill with the Dragon Blade. It's all about the Genjis right now in this fight, Doctor. It's 99% for Default. Can they close it out?
It's really going to come down to this 1v1 versus Yang. Yang does take down Bane in the air. It's just Purge left alive on the point. They should be able to come back in and contest. The few late picks, though, will mean that we should see Default come back in and try and retake this point. He's actually going to come back in and keep contesting.
J-Doggy's hit the tactical visor. He's already killed Vitania with the Helix rocket. He's looking for some more members. Saigoon holds up the shield. He's got Becca to deal with him. Right behind him, Saigoon ends up taking out Becca. Arco hits the sound barrier, but he dies just before he can get off the animation. And J-Doggy's has got himself a double kill. They just need to worry about Bane, who's high in the sky. He doesn't touch the checkpoint, and it's 2-0 for Default, looking pretty strong.
That pick onto Arco was absolutely huge there at the end there. Just taking him down during that sound barrier, that would have given them the opportunity to come back in with more players, but it kept those few people alive. Unfortunately there for Mr. Saigoon, he backed away a little bit too far off the point, recognizes it, goes for the charge. Unfortunately there, the players were still coming back to Default, and they looked very much in control of that towards the end there.
Ebin's just shook up here. They need to regroup and regather themselves. This is their backs up against the wall. If they do not make this play, or they do not win this point, it's going to be all over for them, depending on other matchups. But you imagine if they lose this Doctor, it's all over for Ebin, so there's a lot riding on this point.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on that. One thing they need to recognize right now is they really need to shut down Yang or J-Doggy's here. He feels like he's sitting at the back, too uncontested, but it is off the back of Yang making that space along with Purge. So if they can collapse onto one of those targets and take him out early on, since they're running such an aggressive dive comp, they really need to get him early on.
I like Hex, he's ready for the dive. He's on that Zarya, so he can get those Graviton surges up and help his backline. And Barchu, he's going quite aggressive, along with Bane on the higher ground. No one has switched off any characters here, Ebin, so they're feeling comfortable with their current lineup. They were quite close last checkpoint, but they've already the first ones to fall with Yang getting the kill on Mr. Saigoon. J-Dog is finished off Bane high in the sky, so the cap is coming out from Ebin, so they're getting a sneaky one here, Satiric, but the numbers advantage is with Default.
Yeah, at the moment right now, Default, they're not even worrying about the point. They can go back in and take this whenever they want. They're just going to focus on the fight at hand at the front. And once again, Yang, it feels like in all of these rollouts, he got the opening pick, and they've won every single rollout on all these maps. They've really grouped up and played well together. Mr. Saigoon once again swapping off that Winston to the Reinhardt, and that's going to put him behind a fair bit behind Purge's Earthshatter here, so he'll need to make sure that they group up and consolidate and don't get caught out eventually when Purge does come out with such an advantage on his Earthshatter.
And then do have the Dragon Blade, they're going to pop it now with Barchu. Tana uses the Pulse Bomb as well to get a kill for himself, so the advantage is with Ebin now. Purge is caught away from the rest of his team, he begins to charge back onto the checkpoint, knowing his team's in trouble, but all of them have died. The cap's coming back out for Ebin, they're keeping the dream alive.
Very good retake there coming out from Ebin. They managed to get that Pulse Bomb from Vitania actually landing onto Color Hex there, taking him out and send his corpse flying across the point. Bachu as well, taking down J-Doggies. He used that Dragon Blade, went and isolated J-Doggies on that high ground, getting him out of his good positioning, because one thing that's been happening in a lot of these fights is J-Doggies just sits at the back, gets good positioning, and rains down damage through the entire fight, and then nobody goes up and gives him. If you can dislodge him from that positioning, it gives him an opportunity to collapse in.
Speaking of J-Doggy, he's got the Nano Boost and Tactical Visor. He's looking for some targets, but everyone from Ebin's quite spread around. But they've got the Nano Boost on top of Mr. Saigoon. He does get the kill on top of Purge before being taken down by Color Hex. Sound Barrier was popped by Default, and the picks are coming out for Default. They're looking pretty good. Bane needs to get out there with Satiric, but he can't get out in time. That's a sneaky hook right next to the palm tree. Bane's going to be taken down as well.
Yang with a great long-range scrap gun shot there onto the Tracer of Britannia, taking him out. That was an absolutely superb shot. Losing that DPS play. They were trading early on. The nano boost onto Mr. Saigoon was trying to bring them back into that fight. He does manage to trade with Purge. But in the end, just with those players left alive, you've got J-Doggies. He's doing a lot with that. He didn't get a lot with the tactical visor, but he was still alive at the end of it, cleaning up those players that were left alive on the point. And it feels like Default, they're winning these sustained fights a lot more heavily.
Quite equal now on ult management between the two teams. There's a lot riding on this fight for Ebin, but Britannia's been taken down early, and he died with the Pulse Bomb, so they've got a pretty big disadvantage now, Ebin. They might want to back up, Doctor.
Yeah, they really should look to back away here. They do have quite a decent bank of ultimates. They really just make sure they can synergize and combo them up. There's nothing really to combo up with Britannia's ultimate. It's a lot on him just going in and trying to find a target to get that opening pick.
Just right now, he's got a Roadhog in his sights. He dodges the hook. The rest of Ebin haven't just pulled the trigger just yet. They're just lurking around, and they have wasted some percentages, but they're going to move forward, but they go straight into the side of Graviton Surge. They're throwing down the Body Grenade to keep them alive, but that's Purge and Yang following up with the Nerf Shatter. They get a couple of picks. A whole hook as well from Yang. Purge is going to charge in. He gets point-blank charge on top of Satiric, and Default looking pretty good with the win. There's one fight to go for Ebin.
Very solid usage of ultimates coming out there from default. The Graviton Surge especially holding a lot of the players of Ebin in place. They wanted to engage there. They threw a couple of their ultimates out there. They wanted to get a lot done with that Dragon Blade, but all their players were held back by that Graviton Surge, allowing the rest of them to turn around and deal with Bachu.
Tactical buys from J-Doggies. This looks like it will finish off the fight. Earthshadow in celebratory fashion from Purge. Oh, sorry, that was from Mr. Saigo before he was taken down. Sound barrier popped now for default. They're looking pretty strong top of the checkpoint. It's all up to Bachu. He's been taken down. No one else is left alive. Overtime bar shrinks away. Default can start celebrating. They're looking to head towards the main event next weekend with a beautiful performance over Ebin here on Ilios, Doctor.
Absolutely splendid performance coming out there from default. You've got Yang, he's opening up a lot of space. They try and commit it on him and take him out in these fights. But then when they eventually manage to achieve that, you've got J-Dog who's still alive, you've got Color Hex, you've got all these players left alive that are still doing a lot of work, even though the one being a bit more flashy is Yang.
The one thing I looked at default, they adapted to each point on the map, like each different map. They changed their style up, they were able to counter Ebin, and they looked superb, going 3-0. And to break down the game, we're going to throw it back over the desk. Take it away, boys.
Well, thank you very much for steering us through that absolute slogfest. So, look, guys, there's no two ways about it, right? Ebin, who have showed so much promise, just seem to be falling apart today. And again, this time now in a 3-0 shutout against Default, a team who was ahead of them in the standings, but is honestly not a team I feel is just straight up and down better than Ebin. I feel like this is a game equally winnable for both, but Ebin did not look like they were on par with Default here. What was going wrong?
Well, I mean, again, Ebin, I feel like they just weren't on the same page as the rest of the players, right? Every time they went in, it seemed like just the communication wasn't there. For example, Mr. Saigoon jumping in, kind of missing his jump as Winston, getting the front of the team rather than the center of the team occasionally, and not communicating that to the rest of his team, not saying like, look guys, I missed my jump up, we're gonna have to back this one out, maybe one of us dies, maybe we're gonna move out, and we'll take this fight again a little bit later. And that happened a lot, right? You saw they would get one character picked off, and instead of saying, look guys, you need to back off, they would go in again. And the communication just didn't feel like it was there, particularly for the DPS players. Bachu and Vitania, they got some great players, there's no doubt about that, and they're great players as well, but when they don't have the backup of their team, communicating with them like look guys, this is not the time to go in, you're very likely not gonna get a cleanup kill here, then yes, there's gonna be a lot of fights that you're gonna lose, and that's exactly what happened.